The Galactic Conclave had never lost a war. In 500,000 years of recorded history, across 11,000 conquered species and 42 stellar empires reduced to ash, the Conclave had never once faced a civilization that refused to kneel. They were ancient beyond human comprehension, their warships the size of moons, their weapons capable of boiling oceans from orbit. So when their Grand Herald, Vorith the Eternal, materialized inside the United Earth Assembly Hall in Washington, D.C. on a Tuesday morning in 2187, he expected the usual response. Trembling. Weeping. Perhaps some dramatic begging. Instead, Secretary General James Hartley leaned back in his chair, loosened his tie, and said, "You've got 30 seconds to tell me why I shouldn't have you escorted out of this building." Vorith blinked all 6 of his eyes. No species had ever spoken to him that way. "Humanity," Vorith announced, his translator implant rendering his words in perfect English, "you will surrender your 12 colony worlds, dismantle your military fleet and submit to conclave governance within 72 of your planetary hours. Failure to comply will result in the total annihilation of your home star system." He paused for effect. "You have seen what we did to the Catharians. You have seen what we did to the Valorn Dominion." Hartley looked around the room at his advisors. General Maria Vasquez caught his eye and gave a small shrug that clearly said, "Your call, boss." Hartley turned back to Vorith. "Try me," he said. "And see what happens." Aboard the Conclave Command Vessel Eternal Dominion, High Commander Zale reviewed the transmission from Vorith with something that passed for amusement among his species. "They said try me?" Zale repeated. "Verbatim, High Commander." Zale clicked his mandibles in laughter. His senior staff joined in. The Valorn had begged. The Catharians had wept and offered tribute. Even the legendary Morkai warlords had surrendered after the first demonstration of conclave firepower. But humanity, a species barely 2 centuries into interstellar travel, a species that had only recently stopped fighting each other, was telling the most powerful military force in the known galaxy to try them. "Destroy one of their colony worlds," Zale ordered, still laughing. "The one called New Denver. Let them watch." The order was given. A conclave annihilation fleet, 200 warships, jumped to the New Denver system. They expected silence from the colony. They expected screaming transmissions. They expected humans to finally, properly, be afraid. What they found instead were 370 human warships already waiting in formation. And a single open transmission from Admiral Danny Cole, commander of Earth's first expeditionary fleet, who said simply, "We figured you'd pick this one. Took you long enough." The Conclave had superior numbers. They had superior technology. By every calculation their war computers could run, the human fleet should have been destroyed in 11 minutes. 4 hours later, the Conclave fleet was gone. Not retreated. Gone. What the Conclave hadn't accounted for, what no species in the galaxy had ever bothered to account for, was that humanity had spent its entire existence at war with itself. They hadn't wasted their centuries of conflict. They had studied it. They had failed, adapted, failed again, adapted again, and somewhere in that brutal, ugly cycle, they had become something the galaxy had never produced before. Humans weren't the strongest species. They weren't the fastest. They didn't live the longest or think the deepest. But they were the most stubborn things the universe had ever accidentally created. And they had weaponized that stubbornness into something terrifying. Admiral Cole's tactics were not logical. They were not predictable. They were aggressive where retreat made sense, patient where aggression seemed obvious, and utterly, completely irrational by any standard conclave war doctrine recognized. Conclave computers couldn't model human decision-making because human decision-making had never fully made sense even to humans. You cannot predict chaos. You cannot outmaneuver an enemy who learned strategy by losing 10,000 wars and getting back up every single time. High Commander Zale stared at the battle report for a very long time. 200 warships. The finest vessels in conclave history. Crewed by warriors who had broken 11,000 civilizations. 11 minutes became 4 hours. 4 hours became nothing. He opened a direct channel to Secretary General Hartley. Hartley answered on the second ring, coffee in hand, looking mildly inconvenienced. "You're ready to talk?" Hartley asked. Zale had ruled star systems. He had watched empires crumble at his command. He had never, in 5 centuries of warfare, spoken the words he spoke next. "We underestimated you," Zale said quietly. Hartley nodded, took a sip of his coffee. "They always do," he said. "Welcome to the conversation, Commander. Have a seat." The Galactic Conclave never launched a second attack. Humanity never asked for an apology. They simply moved forward, because that, more than anything, was what humans did. The universe had learned, too late, exactly what humans meant when they said, "Try me. And see what happens." End.